Welcome to Tales of Blue, where my next guest came through a huge period of change at the club, with managers and players coming and going at an alarming rate. But he still managed to force his way into the first team despite the constant upheaval, and also playing a part in the club's return from its lowest ever league standing today. I'm delighted to be joined by Jim Whitley. How are you doing, Jim?
Hello, mate. You're right.
Yeah, good. Good to have you on.
Thanks, Mark.
So, Jim, born in Zambia, lived in Wales from the age of 11. How did Jim Whitley find his way to Maine Road, age 15?
Oh man, listen, football was a massive. Moving to Wrexham, watching Robbie Savage play was my goal. To be honest, he was incredible. He was absolutely incredible, and so I just kind of followed his footsteps. But when I was 15, I was going to sign for Shrewsbury at the time, and my sister, who lives in Manchester, just said she looked through the yellow pages and managed to get Terry Farrell's number out of the yellow pages and just rang Man City and said, "Look, my brother's going to sign for Shrewsbury. Would you take a look at him?" And they had trials the following week, and I went to City, and there was a 2-day trial. And out of those 2 days, I probably only played about 30 minutes, if that. And I got a lot of the ball, and I signed a week later. It's just simple as that. So I was very lucky. I'm very lucky. I think you need that. Any kids that are watching, you do need a bit of luck. And that's the story in a nutshell.
They'll be reaching for the kids won't know what the yellow pages is these days. They'll be reaching for that, looking for Pep's number. Give him a call.
Yeah.
But you signed a professional contract with City age 18 in 1993. What are your early memories of that time at City and in Manchester?
Well, I came from Wrexham, where I was kind of the only black guy in the village, as they said. Yeah. And I moved to Manchester, and I went to and did my A-levels at Loretto College, which is right in the middle of Moss Side. That was a totally different ball game altogether. Yeah. It was just getting used to all that, and just, do you know what? Getting trying to do the work, and because I finished my A-levels when I signed for my professional contract, and I was buzzing to sign a professional contract. Just back fitting in with the lads, because I wasn't there when I did my A-levels, so I wasn't in that dressing room feel. So I just wanted to be in the dressing room to feel what it was like with the boys, because there's a lot of banter going on back then, a hell of a lot of banter. The dressing room banter was unreal. So just fitting in and progressing. That's all I've ever done. Practice and try and get better. I still practice now and try and perfect any technique, but that's all I did, mate. And it was a wonderful thing at that time.
Who made the most impressions on a young Jim Whitley arriving sort of in and around the club at that time?
Do you know who I was? Now, I wasn't. We used to play games against each other, first team, etc. And Gary Flitcroft was one that I always used to watch. He was hard in tackle. Work rate was fantastic. Just for me to watch that moment and in positions I was playing, I remember just thinking, God, he works hard. You could feel a tackle when he came in.
Yeah.
And he was my first instance just going, wow, he's tough.
So do you have a standout memory sort of from a game, an incident that might have happened in your time in the youth team and reserve team fixtures playing for City?
Yeah, one in particular. So we used to play at Platt Lane for the oldies that used to come and watch. You could stand around the fence and give a stick if you needed to. That was part and parcel of playing at Platt Lane. But so we used to play there every week. And my first memory was when we played United at Platt Lane, and everything was different. I turned up and the car park was full. There's fans already there. All the hierarchy was there, from the managers. I remember Peter Reid turning up. That was my early recollection. All of them were there. They never turned up to any other game. But Peter Reid, all the reserve coaches, everyone was there. And this all of a sudden was a big occasion. So I learned really from an early age that a derby against United wasn't like any other game. And it was built in you quite early on that you had to perform against the derby. You don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, when you ended up playing in the derby in the first team, it was a bragging rights. It was something you can't lose, and it's something maybe some of the foreigners that come over don't quite grasp. Mm-hmm. It was massive, and I remember just thinking, this this is huge. It just raised the stakes quite considerably. That was my early memory of playing A and B teams game, and my early recollection as a professional footballer.
Did you ever run in with Bryan Robson around that time? Was
yeah.
in a game? He was sort of coming back to fitness, and he appeared for sort of their team reserve side.
That's right. And you know what? The beauty of the A, B, and reserve team games is that, you know, the B team was predominantly the younger lads coming through 16, 17. Then you went into the A team, which was almost like an open age, and it was a chance where first teamers, if they weren't ready for the reserves, they would come in and play an A team game. And we played in a derby, and Robbo was playing. I remember playing up front, and I must have been doing quite well. The ball came into my chest, and I remember chesting it up, and I just nodded it away. And as I nodded it away, Bryan Robson came in the field and just studded me straight in my chest, and I had these 4 stud marks down my chest. And he got sent off for that game. But I remember coming in going, I've got stud marks on Robbo.
It certainly left an impression on you, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, that's you learn, and I learned quite early on from one of the masters.
So your debut for City arrives from the bench in January 1998 during a 2-0 FA Cup win over Bradford. How did you find out you'd be involved with the first team that afternoon, and what are your memories of making a Maine Road debut?
So I was playing really well at the time, and I'd been to see Frank Clark, and I asked him if I could leave because I wasn't given a chance, and he offered me a new contract, which I couldn't believe. And so I was in the squad on the Friday before the game, and I still didn't think I was going to make it. And when he announced the team, I was on the bench, and I thought, well, I'm still not going to play because I hadn't been given a chance. And by luck, as it happens, I think it was Crooksy got injured, and I came on, and I was really relaxed, and I just thought, no one knows me, so I'm just going to go and do what I've been doing. And it's probably one of my best games that I played for City, because I was so relaxed, and I made an impression. So I'll never forget that feeling. It was the best day for me as a Man City player.
So you didn't have to wait long for your first start, which came a week later away at Portsmouth, along the likes of experienced first teamers like Ian Brightwell, Uwe Rosler, Kinky. What are your memories of that day?
Again, because I'd seen it from afar all the time, and I'd been part of the team, but never the immediate team. I'd always be the one that would be in the shadow team, or the ones that were there to help the first team. So to be part of that team right at the beginning was, it's quite incredible. Being in the dressing room and being the first ones to run out, it's quite an incredible feeling. One that you always dream about, but you can't quite prepare yourself until it actually happens, because it's a special thing. You have to calm the nerves and try and keep doing what you're doing, even though the brain tells you you need to do extra, but you can't do extra. You just need to do what you've been doing. And it was, quite fantastic, mate. And I can't quite believe I've been there and done it, to be fair.
Stuff. So you work alongside Kinky in training most days. How good was he? And was he a good trainer?
Kinky is unbelievable. He's the best player I've seen in training and in games when he turned it on. Now, Kinky for me should be spoke about with the higher echelons of the Ronaldos, and people might laugh at this, but he was that good. The problem with Kinky is that the manager loved him so well that he'd stop himself out. He'd pull himself out of running. He'd be like, I've had enough. I go in now. I finished. And it was like, come on, everyone else is doing it. And he got to the stage where even in first team games, he'd go past 1 or 2 players, and that was it. And he'd get man of the match. And we were playing with 10 men for 85 minutes of the game. And so I just think he got a bit lazy in the end, but he was incredible. I can't tell you how good he was in training. He had a drop of the shoulder that he sent everyone in the audience, in the crowd. You know what I mean? He was that good. And I can't speak highly of Kinky, because he did things with the ball that no one else could do. And if he was playing with better players, I would imagine he would have got to the higher echelons, which he should have done.
Been interesting to see him in today's City team. That's for sure.
he'd be incredible, because not only could he play 1 and 2 touch, which is needed in the game for the flow of the game, but he also could drop a shoulder and go past 1, 2 whenever he needed. And I think he'd be perfect in Man City squad right now, because he would keep the ball going, and at some point he'd just drop the shoulder in and play that lovely ball that he'd play between the lines, and he'd be incredible right now for Manchester City.
And there'd be plenty of others who could do his running for him, couldn't they, to get back?
Yes, yes. Although I don't think Pep would allow it.
No.
That's what a Pep team does. You have to work. The Aguero had to do it. And so no one's that good where you can't run. And so he would have to work, but he was incredible.
So your brother Jeff had joined the club by this stage. How did it feel to play alongside him in City's first team? I'm sure that's a question you've been asked many a times, but you obviously played as kids together. So to be professionals at the same club.
Do you know? It's only when I finished and look back on reflection that you can appreciate how good a thing it was, because when it happens, it's just part of the process. Oh, my brother's here. Oh, we're training together. Oh, we're in the first team together. Then we played for Northern Ireland together. It's quite something. It's only later on in your career when you finish and you start looking and you think, wow, me and my brother actually played.
Yeah.
A number of people that try and make it in the game, and the 2 of us did it, and to play together, it's, there's 4 years difference between us, and he had a very good start at Manchester City, and it's incredible. I still pinch myself now to think, and I look back at pictures and celebrations, and it always brings a smile to my face.
Great memories, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Which players offered you the best advice, Jim, during the early first team appearances? There's some experienced lads in the squad.
Look, I laugh because back then the kind of advice you got was, if you don't drink, you're not going to make it. So that was part of the advice that we got. So it's quite tough, really, to look back and go, how did we do it? Because that's what they used to do, and get their way through it. So it was more on your own ability to make it in the first team. And I wish I'd have set goals to try and get further, make, instead of 2, 3 appearances, make it 10, make it 20, make it 30, and build on that. How many appearances can I make in the Northern Ireland team? But such was life back then that it wasn't quite the same. So I used to watch various players in training, Kinky being one of them, trying to get the drop of the shoulder that he used to do. I used to try and practice that, even though I couldn't do it. But the likes of Brightwell that used to be there, just a hard worker in training, always looked after himself.
Yeah, great
always
career.
Did things as a professional.
Great longevity career at City. Many games.
So I tried to follow anything like that as I could. And do you know what? As a professional, you always try and pick things off of various players and learn from everyone. And that's the most important thing, as opposed to thinking, I'm the best player in the world. You try and learn as you go along. And I'm still learning now.
So with City experiencing one of its darkest periods at the club, it's fair to say you were really starting to find your feet in the first team, and you finished the season with Young Player of the Year award. How pleased were you on a personal level with the progress you were making?
To win that accolade was amazing. To know that I'd been voted for by everyone else, it was quite satisfying, I have to say. From the only other awards I'd kind of got was 12, 13-year-olds. You get your Players Player of the Year or the Manager's Player. So to win that award at that stage in the first team at a club like Manchester City was it was quite incredible, mate. I'll be honest with you, and I can't put into words, especially from my debut to playing at that level, to winning that accolade was amazing, mate. It really was.
Fantastic. Again, you featured regularly during the 98-99 season. How difficult a start was it to life in what was the old First Division for City?
Very difficult. Very difficult, because every team we played, it was an FA Cup for them. And not only were they very defensive against us, they wanted to kick us. They wanted to prove that playing against Manchester City, that they may have a chance of a move themselves. So they played out the skin. Every week was a tough game. I'd say sometimes, especially playing in midfield, the ball was in the air for half the game, just constantly trying to battle for balls in the air, which is it's not how you're supposed to play. You want to get it down and play, and it was a very tough way to play. But we found that fitness, and I'd always try and tell any players this: if you're fit, you've got a very good chance. And fitness in the end probably got us through. Obviously, we had a bit of quality in the side compared to some of the other teams, but fitness and hard work got us through that league, I have to say.
How important was Andy Morrison signing that season? And what are your early memories of Andy at the club?
He was a scary man, but what a signing that was, I have to say. He would give you a right rollicking if you went pulling your weight. And it was very scary at times, but he lifted everyone. And I know he was injured at times and he was carrying injuries even going into games, but his presence and that kind of hard man kind of appearance in that league definitely helped, lifted all the players. And he wasn't the tallest of players, but he'd win so many balls.
Yeah.
He could ping a ball, so he would get us out of situations, and he would organise and be a leader, which is something we badly needed. But he was a massive signing, and he lifted every player in that dressing room.
Would it have been a good idea at that stage to have played a prank on Andy, like hide his car keys or his kit?
He'd be a very brave man to try that on Andy Morrison.
He was not. Andy's socks up then.
Yeah, he was great. He was great. He really was. But you just knew there were limits to what you could do with Andy, and he's probably more jovial now. He's not out the game. He's manager now, but I would joke more with him now than I would as a player back then, because he'd probably grab me if I wasn't pulling my weight. So, but great lad.
So Willie Donachie rarely gets a mention, but what kind of role did he play and his influence on the team during that period? Again,
Willie was beyond his years. Willie Donachie was trying to introduce yoga and different methods of training, and he'd also lead by example. He'd take us running, but he would lead the running, and he'd be up there with the running. I remember running with him, and we'd start a warm up, and we'd keep going, and me and Jeff would always be there, and Gary Mason would always be there, and he'd be edgy because we were one of the fitter ones, and we'd be alongside him, and I'd turn around and people can't keep up, and he was a fit coach, and he would lead by example and said, this is what you need to be at. You need to be at this level to try and compete. And he was a lot older than us, and so leading by fitness, which is what I said, helped us get through that. And game plans. We'd have game plans at the beginning of games to do things for the first 15, 20 minutes before changing into something else. Having a plan B and a plan C, various combinations for corners. And he was one of the first ones to implement a lot of this. And Willie Donachie would be great, in today's game as a younger man, because of the ideas that he had. He probably didn't have exactly the best players to work with at Manchester City, but he was fantastic, Willie Donachie, and I can't speak highly of him.
So the season ends at Wembley, playoff final. We all know that story, but how close were you to being involved that day?
I was injured again. It was a season of injuries, and then and what I found at a team like Manchester City is that because of how big a club it is, unless you are one of the big stars like a Kinky and Clancy, you don't walk back into the team. You have to fight back for it, and if you're out for long enough, they'll buy someone in, or someone comes in and takes your place. And I remember Jeff being at the time he was out of favour, but because of injuries, he got brought back and had a magnificent resurgence to his Manchester City career, and he ended up being in there. And Michael Brown as well ended up coming and doing really well. So I just kind of knocked down the pecking order because of injuries and couldn't get back in. But I was injured, but still part of the team and part of the group and the feeling. So I was gutted not to be on the pitch, obviously, but I was still there with the boys and experienced everything that went on.
How do you remember Les Chapman from his spell there? Quite a character.
Chappie. I love Chappie. I can't. there's certain people in that had been there throughout my career, and Chappie was one of them. He was constant, and he would lift moods. His character, the ability to get the lads together, just a general nice man. I can't. Chappie is incredible. I love him to bits, Chappie, and like I say, he was there a long time. I wish he was still there now, but he was fantastic. Not only as an ex-player, but someone who could be in training and get a laugh out of anything, and he was fantastic.
So you only appear a couple more times for the club, Jim, and City go back to the Division 1, and then eventually Kevin Keegan comes in, and you eventually join Wrexham on a loan spell. Did you have any interaction with Keegan when he'd come to the club, and did you know you thought your time was up?
No, I didn't speak to Keegan. I wish I had. I'd love to have seen his training methods, but as a footballer, this is life. My contract was coming up to an end. There was too many pros.
A lot of turnover of players as well during this period.
It's ridiculous. So you have to. This football, you don't want to leave. You want to stay there for the rest of your life. But he looked at who'd been playing, who hadn't, and I'd been playing. So I was out on loan. I'd been to Norwich and Blackpool and Northampton. You know, I'd been around, and so he probably looked on paper and just thought, no, I need to look at other players and get this club back in where it is. So I don't blame him. That's what happens as a manager, and I was gutted as any player would, but it's football.
So how does Jim Whitley look back on his time as a City player, and do you get a much chance to go back to the club now, Jim?
Whenever I can, I'll go and watch games. Yeah, I sometimes do co-commentary with the BBC, and I look back. I'm lucky. I was lucky to play for Manchester City. I think, and if any kids are watching this, work rate, and it probably helped me more than ability to get into the team. And fitness will always help you in the long term to get in any team. But I wish I wasn't injured as much. But then I can still run around and play now. So maybe the injuries have helped the longevity of my knees and hips and everything else, because I feel really fit right now. But I look back with luck and happy to be part of such a big outfit that is a giant right now in the world of football, Manchester City, and to sit and watch and say I was part of that is a very special thing.
So a couple of favourites, Jim. Favourite City manager you worked under?
Well, I'd have to. Frank Clark gave him a debut, so he's one that stands out. But Joe Roy was special with Willie Donachie. He had a certain wit about in the dressing room, a different way. He would make me feel great. You know, there's times he'd ask me just to go man mark one player. He said, I don't want you doing it, go mark him. And so I might not be in the game for most of it, but I'd do my job. Yeah. And he'd come back and he'd put my arm around me and said, you helped win the game today, even though I hadn't done much. And he'd make me feel great. Yeah. You know, and so he was excellent at that. Very, very good. I remember me, Brownie, and Jeff used to call us the three rats, and he'd go win that ball back for us, and he'd make you feel so good. And so Joe Royal for me was one that stood out because of the ability of what he did with players.
Favourite teammate?
I had a few.
You're on the spot, really. That.
But I had a few. Gary Mason, I still stay in touch with. I'm still in touch with a lot of the lads. I was at City from 16 to 18, so I'm still in touch with a group that we speak to and play with each other. But one player probably that stands out, and there's no disrespect to any of those because there's so many players that I've seen at Manchester City. But Kev Horlock for me was one of my best buddies I still speak to, and he was jovial around the dressing room.
Quite a character.
What a character, absolute character. And I used to go around to his house quite a lot, and I'd get fed a lot often at his house. And, he was great, Kev. I really love Kev, and there's a lot of banter between us. And he was one of the first players, believe it or not. So if he was good in training or good in the game, you never hear of end of it. He's like this, non-stop. But I tell you, when he had a bad game, he would self-criticize himself so that no one else could have a go at him. And it was very clever. It was very, very clever. And he would come in and say, God, I'm having one. I bring myself off because I'm playing for the other team. And you couldn't have a go at him. And it was an excellent way that he did it. But Kev was great.
Favourite memory. So what memory jumps out straight away if you ask for a favourite City memory?
It's got to be my debut. It's the one thing that sticks in my mind more than anything. Obviously, the being promoted, the Gillingham moment, but on a personal level, it's got to be the debut for both my club and my country. They'll stay in my mind. I can almost feel every pass that I made, every little movement, because there was quite a few good ones. So that is for me the most special time, my debut for Manchester City.
Fantastic. So one word answers: Premier League or Champions League? Andy Morrison or Ruben Diaz?
Oh, he might kill me. Diaz.
Oh, worst dressed player during your spell at the club?
Sorry, Uwe.
We'll move on.
Uwe Rosler.
So Kevin Horlock or Jeff Whitley?
I'm going the old Horlock because I see my brother all the time.
Bernardo Silva or Georgie Kinkladze?
Yeah. I've seen him live. I'm Geo.
Oh. So what's Jim Whitley of 2022 up to these days?
All sorts, from still singing, gigging around to a lot of one-on-one training, which I love more than anything, to be honest with you. Trying to pass on any tips that I used to do as a kid and pass that on to the youngsters. So I'm really enjoying that on the one-to-one basis. I've got my AFB now. I never thought I would be doing that because I hated football, to be honest with you. When I left Wrexham, I really hated it. And I found the love again for football, and who knows what might happen in the future, but I am enjoying the football coaching, and that takes a lot of time, as well as my artwork, which I will continue doing till my hand falls off. But it's a mixture of various things, but the coaching is something that I'm really into at the moment.
Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat City with you and share your tales of blue, and I wish you all the very best.
Thanks, Mark. I hope the sound didn't spoil anything then, by the way. So, well, thanks again for inviting us, Mark.